Welcome back to my little channel. Today we're going to talk about something that I never thought would happen to, well, in all fairness, a field of practice. What am I talking about? A quote will start me off. You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Now, some people of you will know this one, and in all fairness, it is a quote from Harvey Dent, which is a comic book character, a Batman villain. And yeah, that's all you need to know about it. It doesn't really matter. But it is a very apt one, because in all fairness, most villains are the heroes of some people. Hell, one could even say most villains are the hero in their own story. But what's even worse is the story of Harvey Dent. He actually was a district attorney and he did good until he got into a chemical bath and turned evil. I'm not here to talk about comics though. I'm here to talk about the American Psychological Association. What does that have to do with die a hero, become a villain? Okay, now some of you might know this. I may have mentioned it once or twice. For nearly all of my adult life, I've been working in the field of psychiatry. There is a slight difference between the two, but bear with me for this one. Psychology seemed to me a philosophy, but a philosophy I deemed important. I thought that the people doing research in a psychological way do so for the betterment of all people. And we do recognize that certain prospects are bound by culture. I know that there will be idiots out there that will say it's bound by ethnicity or by race. No, they're bound by culture. And knowing this, it makes it really, really scary to see what the EPA has done now. The EPA? EPE? Fuck it. They broadcasted to the world that they're on board with feminist theory. Really? Yeah, really. They kind of decided it's time to shaft all men. I'm going to talk about the Boys and Men Practice Guidelines. This is something the EPA published. It's meant to have people think about how to deal with men, fair enough. The concept of guidelines to deal with certain groups isn't new. I mean, in all fairness, different cultures, different cultural backgrounds do need different ways of helping them psychologically. In the end, it's all about helping people. But now, the group that they have singled out, so to speak, is not black people in America, Latino men in America, or people with gender dysphoria. No. The group they have singled out is boys and men. So that's roughly half of the world right there. This in itself is unbelievably offensive and stupid, because you're implying that the guidelines to treat boys and men mean that boys and men need treatment. Now, there are people who will say, yeah, no, you're taking it to black and white. And you know what? You might be right. I might be oversensitive to this. But this is what it is implying to me. And if this is what it's implying to me, then I'm pretty sure it implies the same thing to other people. Now, if you were to say helping boys, Hispanic boys and men in America, then you already make the group a lot smaller, because not all men in America are Hispanic. Not all Hispanic men are in America. But by saying boys and men, basically you're saying everyone. And I know the American Psychological Association is about America, but the rest of the Western world does look at what they're doing. Because in all fairness, nearly all research in the Western world is being shared in the Western world. And something as big as the American psychological association pushing this feminist narrative means that this bastion of science has completely fallen. Now, we knew it wouldn't take long, because if we look at the social grievance studies that have proven how, well, lame a duck the social sciences have become. But at the same time, I did not expect this, and I didn't expect it. No, I wanted to say I didn't expect it so soon, but I didn't expect this at all. People who should know better are telling us the following thing, and this is just the introduction, but bear with me on this one. Boys and men are diverse with respect to their race, ethnicity, culture, migration status, age, socio-economic status, ability status, sexual orientation, gender identity, and religious affiliation. Now, this sentence alone is quite scary, because now what they are telling us is that boys and men can have different things in their life. Their race, which is biological, which is a fact. Their ethnicity, which is biological, which is a fact. Their culture, which is sociological, but still a fact. Their migration status, which is sociological and still a fact. Their age, biological and a fact. Socioeconomic status. Now, here we become a little bit entrenched in, well, SJW language, because socioeconomic status doesn't really mean that much, but it can have a cultural effect, therefore it can be somewhat of an issue. Ability status, again, this is a fact. Sexual orientation, which I'm going to completely boil down to fact as well. Gender identity, now we're back in social justice territory. And religious affiliation, which is basically culture. So we have two things that are clearly social justice narratives. And the worst one of these, the gender identity, was, till a few years ago, basically a psychiatric diagnosis of something being wrong with you called gender dysphoria. So far, they named a bunch of things which are credible, I won't lie, and two things that are narrative-based. Now, with socioeconomic status, you can say, well, there is something to it. But the truth is, no, it's not, because the part of rich people having certain ideas, etc., are not based on their socioeconomic status. They're based on the culture they live in. One could, however, claim that socioeconomic station and culture are somewhat intertwined. Okay, going to go with that one. But gender dysphoria is a psychological diagnosis. How can you pretend that this is something that is indicative of your person? Now, it could be something you need treatment for. Fair enough. But it's not something you need to keep in mind when treating someone. I mean, it's like saying, well, I'm going to the dentist and they're going to keep in mind that they need to do the cavities in my teeth. No, that's why you're there. And it's even worse, because this is implying that the dentist should drill around the cavities because, hey, cavities are good for some stupid reason. And I know they're not actually saying it, but they are implying it very much. And they even go on with saying, for example, the development of guidelines for such psychological practices with boys and men may help to attend to the barriers that lead to the aforementioned disparities. There's some of them there. But gender dysphoria is a disparity. But they go right over it. They've got 10 points, and I'll do these 10 points as well. But this is really scary. This is the people that are supposed to help people with psychological problems. And this is how they think about boys and men. I fear that this may cause boys and men to stop listening and looking for help with psychologists. And that's really scary, because once they go to people in our line of work, they do so because they need help. They don't need indoctrination. And I don't understand how the American Association of Psychologists is publishing this, well-printed toilet paper, to be honest. But let's continue with the 10 points they made. Okay, guideline 1. Psychologists strive to recognize that masculinities are constructed and based on social, cultural, and contextual norms. And this is bullshit. Masculinities aren't constructed. There are specific behavioral patterns within males on any age. Now, culture does influence these behaviors, but there's a reason that even a newborn baby, if it's a boy, will gravitate towards cars, and if it's a girl, will gravitate towards dolls. This is bred into us. It's genetic. We can't really deny that. Now, is this true for all boys? No, of course not. Just like it's not true for all girls. But on average, yes, it is. And then they say something like this in their guideline 1. Understanding the socially constructed nature of masculinity and how it affects boys and men, as well as psychologists, also is an important cultural competency. Fuck that. But it's bullshit. Masculinity isn't socially constructed. Now, I could read the rest of their stuff. I suggest you do, so that you know I'm not bullshitting you. But they list a number of psychological studies, and if nothing else, the grievance studies showed us how easy it is to get published. So I'm not here to defend or take down these individual studies. But the conclusions that this paper is taking from them must be wrong, because it's subjective. You can't claim objectively that, well, masculinity is a social construct. Because if it's objectively or subjectively a social construct, you should be able to point it out. And the fact that babies already start playing with male toys before any socialization has happened proves that it's not based on socialization. Obviously, I will look for the study from that one too, and I will have it down here. It's kind of funny because it's from Baron Cohen, and yes, he's a brother to Baron Cohen, the comedian, but this one is a lot more serious. It's brilliant, to be honest. Now, guideline 2 does seem to be a little bit more, well, fair. Psychologists strive to recognize that boys and men integrate multiple aspects to their social identities across a lifespan. And on average, I'm going to say, yeah, no, okay, nothing wrong with that. But then you read the whole thing. And the worst part, well, I'm not going to read it all here, but there's this one sentence that basically says it all. Gender identity development begins before birth, shaped by the expectations that parents and other significant adults have for how a boy should be treated and how he should behave. Now, in all fairness, this means that your gender identity starts before you were born. And it goes even further. It starts before you are conceived. Because what they're talking about is the expectations of others. Now, this in itself is a problem because, let's be honest, the reason why gender dysphoria is such a growing development is because our society has a push to normalize gender dysphoria. It comes mostly from feminism, and this is one of the reasons why I hate feminism. But, for example, parents who push the idea that they're going to raise their children gender neutral are actually doing harm to their child because they are hindering their development. Now, if you're saying I'm going to, raise them gender neutral, and if they want to play with dolls, they play with dolls, and if they want to play with trucks, they play with trucks, and I'll have it all in the house so he can always choose, or she can always choose, then you're not actually raising them gender neutral, you're raising them. The thing that most parents do when they say they raise someone gender neutral is to try and push female traits on their child as well. I'm sorry, that's not gender neutral. You're harming your child. So, in a way, yeah, sure, they're correct. But at the same time, they are very much incorrect, because gender identity is something that you should have. It's something that you should develop. But as they unintentionally actually admit here, is that it's being pushed upon you. To me, that's a problem. To them, it's, well, never mind. Next point. Psychologists understand the impact of power, privilege, and sexism on the development of boys and men and on their relationship with others. So, okay, sexism can be a thing. Is it a thing? Sometimes. Not nearly as often as they claim it to be. Power? What power? Privilege? Seriously? Privilege is now a serious psychological term? This angers me. I'm not even going to go into this one. I mean, if you believe that people have privilege, then you're an idiot. I mean, yeah, sure, they can have wealth, and with wealth comes privilege, but that's not based on whether you're a man or not. That's based on whether you're wealthy or not. You could have power, yeah, sure. If you're the CEO of a multinational company, or you're, I don't know, an elected official, yeah, sure you have power. This is not something that holds true for men. This holds true for their specific position. Sexism, yeah, sure, you can have sexist tendencies, but then that's individual. It's not inherent to being a man. I'm not even going to go into the whole rationale for them. It's bullshit. It's basically buzzword. We've got a few buzzwords. This is the soup we created out of it. We call this soup men. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I'm not soup. Guideline 4. Psychologists strive to develop a comprehensive understanding of the factors that influence the interpersonal relationship of boys and men. And trust me, psychologists strive to develop a comprehensive understanding of the factors that influence the interpersonal relationships of girls and women too. Otherwise, you're not doing your bloody job. Now, I'm not going to read all the rest of it again. I didn't exaggerate when I said this is toilet paper. Let's put it like that. And let's go to Guideline 5. Guideline 5. Psychologists strive to encourage positive father involvement and a healthy family relationship. Yeah, no, you don't. It depends on the situation. But the example they are coming with, or rather, the explanation they are coming with in this story, is that there are about 70 million fathers in the United States, and, well, nationally, a representative sample suggests that more than 80% of these fathers report being involved in their children's life. But little more than half of these fathers believe that they are doing a very good job. Notice the addition to the word very. Most people will more than likely say that they're doing a good job. But there are a lot of people out there who recognize that you don't go beating your own drum and saying, oh no, I'm doing a very good job. And this is where they base their point on, that a psychologist needs to strive to encourage a positive father's involvement. I'm sorry, I'm happy with a father that does a good job. And I'm not happy with a psychologist that strives to try and get more fatherly involvement or motherly involvement where it is not wanted or needed. So to say, no, but the guideline says we have to get more of parental involvement. Let's call it parental, because it doesn't have to be based on either sex. There are situations where, as a psychologist, you do not want parental involvement. Because, let's be honest, domestic violence does happen. And it's not always the men that do it, and it's not always the woman that do it. But in the case of domestic violence, the child always suffers. Anyway, so yeah, no, this is bullshit. It sounds nice. It's narrow-minded, but it's bullshit. Guideline 6 says that psychologists strive to support the educational efforts that are responsive to the needs of boys and men. But are they really? So what are psychologists going to do to help boys in schooling? Now, here's the funny thing. They're not really going to do anything. They're basically going to say, well, yeah, but we see that on average, men still are holding certain fields in college. They're majoring in stuff that women are not. But on average, we see a decline of men in college. So we're going to stimulate men to go and study more, because that's what we should do. Yeah, but shouldn't you first look at why men are no longer going to college, no longer going to universities? They're only active in certain fields, and even there, they are somewhat retreating. Because you're talking about, oh no, we need to encourage these kids to do this, when 40 years ago, 60 years ago, these kids didn't get encouragement to do this, and they still did it. So something else has changed. And you know what? Maybe we should look in our society what caused boys and young men, young adults, to drop out. Could there have been something changing within our society that caused boys and young men to feel that the educational system isn't for them? See, now that's something to look into. But no, you're not going to look into that. You're going to coach kids to do better at school and to stop being masculine and stop harassing women and believe her when she says that he did something wrong. And then he will drop out because he has the feeling that he can't go to school. Because going to school means that you open yourself to being indicted, being blamed for sexual harassment, even though you haven't done anything. Psychologists strive to reduce the high rates of problems boys and men face and act out in their lives, such as aggression, violence, substance abuse, and suicide. Although the vast majority of males are non-violent, boys and men commit nearly 90% of all violent crimes. Okay. Most cars are not dangerous, but 100% of car accidents are cars. Now that might sound silly, but you're going to pretend that boys are naturally violent. But less than a few percentage of the society causes crime. Now, out of that few percentage, 90% is male. Yeah, okay, sure, I'm going to go with that one. I have no problem with that one. But to pretend that this is a male issue, violence is predominantly male. Yeah, you're right. Are males predominantly violent? No, but you're pretending that they are. The thing is, there are plenty of things happening to men, which is weird considering that the feminists still believe that we live in a patriarchy. I mean, if men are so much higher at risk of being a victim of violent crime, or are so much more likely to commit suicide, or are constantly berated for being male, or they're more likely to be falsely accused of sexual violence. Where is the patriarchy in this? And then, as an application, the guideline says psychologists strive to understand the multiple cultural and individual difference factors that lead to aggression and violence in men and boys, including the intersection of exposure to adverse childhood experience and traditional masculine socialization, where applicable. See, that's the thing. Even in your explanation, in your telling people how to deal with it, you're telling them, but yeah, you know, it's the masculine socialization. And with that, you ignore the fact that male biology is masculine. It doesn't mean you have to be strong, it doesn't mean you have to fight a lot, but boys and men interact in a different way than women do. What makes it masculine? Well, the way we communicate with each other, the directness, the the way we joke, the way we complain, the way we talk about our emotions. Because let's be honest, part of what everyone always says, oh, men are closed about their emotions. No, but we are different about our emotion than women are. See, this, once again, describes the problems of boys as, well, obviously they have these problems because they're defective women. They're way too masculine. It's the destruction of masculinity that causes these problems. It's not the result of masculinity. Psychologists strive to help boys and men engage in health-related behaviors. Yeah, no problem with that one. To be honest, psychologists strive to help girls and women to engage in health-related behaviors. Still no problem with that one as well. Isn't this something that people in the health industry should do to all their patients, clients, whatever the political correct term is this day? The thing is, this isn't a gendered issue. I'm not sure why they make it one. Well, in the text they will tell you certain stuff that, oh no, but men need to do this and that, blah blah. Yeah, but in all fairness, this isn't a gendered issue. Psychologists strive to build and promote gender-sensitive psychological services because a disparity exists between the occurrence and severity of men's health problems and the disproportionate low number of men served by psychological services. And without looking at the why, we're going to tell you that this needs to change. But there's a reason why men don't often go for psychological assistance. Because the way they are being told to change their behavior, even in this article, even in this pamphlet, this printed toilet paper of theirs, they're talking about how masculinity is an issue. So the first thing that I do when I go to a client is not to talk about how his masculinity is an issue, but I look at individual behaviors. And I look at how he perceives those individual behaviors. But that's not what we are telling them when we're telling them stuff like toxic masculinity. When we tell them stuff like, yeah, no, but everyone has a bit of woman inside them and a bit of man inside them. And you have to adjust to your female side and you have to talk about your emotions. That sort of stuff drives men away. There's a reason why men don't talk easily about feeling suicidal. Because within our society, they're not allowed to. And we pretend that we do, even in this article. No, we should let men talk about it. But as soon as they do, you browbeat them because of that. Instead of talking to them about them being okay to be, we're telling them, no, but you suffer from toxic masculinity, mate. In event, you're telling them it's not okay to be you. And this is actually a big problem in the Western world, especially for white men. Because, let's be honest, no one is allowed to be discriminated in the Western world unless you're a white man. And that's obviously because of the patriarchy, because everything is patriarchy. But men don't profit from patriarchy. So how is it patriarchy then? But I get somewhat sidetracked on the issue. The reason why men don't easily go to find help with a psychologist is because psychology has proven to be untrustworthy. This is something that happened in the early 60s where, for example, if a man would go to a psychologist, he was more likely to be berated for being a man, and this continues to this article apparently. Now, thank God, not all psychologists. I mean, let's be honest. Jordan Peterson, one of the reasons why he is so popular is because he recognizes that yes, it's important to help women. Yes, it's important to help men. Yes, it's important to have women be women. But it's equally important to let men be men. But the EPA apparently doesn't really see it that way. Weird how that goes. But we have to talk about gender discrimination because that's a thing. No, well, yeah, sure. let's talk about gender discrimination. Let's talk about how men are the most harassed group of people, but they are nowhere allowed to complain. Nah, that's just toxic masculinity, isn't it? Psychologists understand and strive to change institutional, cultural, and systemic problems that affect boys and men through advocacy, prevention, and education. So, you know what? We're going to talk on how we can help men. Because, men are so violent. They're far more violent than women. And they're dropping out of school. And crime, drug-related stuff, substance abuse. Wait a second. Isn't this more common among boys that were raised in single-parent households? Sorry, female single-parent households, and far less common in households where both parents are there. So, is this a problem of masculinity, or is this a societal problem of the one-parent household? Psychologists also strive to increase awareness of the influence of gender role socialization practices associated with violence and problem behaviors for boys and men along public health officials. Wait a second. Again, is this a masculine problem, or is this a single household problem? Single parent household, sorry. And in all fairness, we actually do know the answer to this one. But we'll ignore it because it's not politically correct. Anyway, I think this is the last bit I'm going to respond to from them. Obviously, this pisses me off. Are there problems with men in our society? Yes, men are being browbeaten. They've been the ones that have been dying for most of the time. I mean, they're the primary victim of violence. They're the primary victim of suicide. And can you call suicide people a victim? Well, in some cases you can, because if you browbeat someone, especially if you browbeat a man, at one point you tell him he has to be able to provide for his family and he has to be able to do X, Y, and Z, and at the same time you blame them if they are not able to do it, and you blame them for doing X, Y, and Z as well. The thing is, at this point in time, men can't do right. If we look at the role models in the media, most role model men in the media are gone. I mean, the last one that you could somewhat see as a role model was, what's his name? The guy from Married with Children, Al Bundy. Kind of funny because the father of The Simpsons was also kind of an Al Bundy. But nearly all male characters since, let's say, well, there are a few male characters that were worthy. I mean, Huxtable's, that was a good one. Too bad that in reality the dude's a... Never mind. There are plenty of examples of male roles in commercials, in television shows, in movies that are either masculine, as in Sylvester Stallone masculine, which is then obviously called toxic masculine, or not masculine at all. They're not even feminine. I have no idea what they are. And then we tell people that boys are bad, they're bolsterous, so we give them ADHD medication because they all suffer from ADHD, because boys need to expend their physical energy, because if they do not, they become rowdy, they become restless, which is then reason to diagnose them with ADHD, which is by far the most falsely made diagnosis in psychiatry. And if that's not bad enough, we blame boys for being boys. We can't say boys will be boys when they rough and tumble play, even though we know, biologically and psychologically, we know rough and tumble play for boys is paramount to their development. But we're going to ignore that because it doesn't fit the narrative. EPA basically proven that they bend the knee to social justice warriors and the feminist narrative. I'm grateful that I'm not a psychologist in America, because I would absolutely be ashamed of the organization that claims to speak for me. Anyway, I put a few links downstairs for your reading. Not everything I said I have substantiated with links downstairs, because I have the feeling no one looks at them anyway. But if you want, I can supply you with more information. Like, share and subscribe if you feel so inclined. If you are here at all, because this is a very long video. Criticism, as always, is more than welcome, so I would like to hear from you.